I want to tell you something that is going to sound wrong when you first hear it. It is going to sound like something a person says when they have never been lonely. But I have been lonely, deeply, for years. And what I am about to tell you is not theory. It is what I found on the other side of the worst loneliness I have ever experienced. Here it is. Loneliness is not your prison. It is your doorway. And on the other side of that doorway is a kind of freedom that most people never experience because they spend their entire lives surrounded by others and never once get the chance to discover who they are when nobody is watching, nobody is needing, nobody is asking, and nobody is defining them. You have that chance right now. The silence you are living in, the empty house, the quiet phone, the long evenings with nobody to talk to, that is not a punishment. That is a gift that was delivered in the worst possible packaging. And today, I am going to teach you how to unwrap it. I need to say something first about why loneliness hurts so much. Because if I don't honor the pain, everything else I say will sound hollow. Loneliness hurts because human beings were built for connection. We are wired for it. Our nervous system expects it. Our brain chemistry depends on it. When you are isolated, your body responds the way it responds to a physical threat. Your stress hormones rise, your sleep suffers, your immune system weakens. Loneliness is not just an emotion, it is a biological emergency. Your body is screaming at you that something essential is missing, and that scream is real, and it should be respected, and it should not be dismissed by anyone, including me, as something you should just get over. I am not telling you to get over your loneliness. I am telling you that inside the loneliness, hidden beneath the pain, there is something else. Something that only becomes visible when you stop fighting the aloneness and start examining it. Something that has the power to transform the worst chapter of your life into the freest one. Let me tell you what I mean by freedom. Because the word gets used loosely, and I want to be specific. I am not talking about political freedom. I am not talking about financial freedom. I am talking about the freedom of identity. The freedom to finally be who you actually are without performing for an audience. Think about your entire life. Since the moment you were old enough to be aware of other people's opinions, you have been performing. You performed for your parents. You performed for your teachers. You performed for your spouse. You performed for your children. You performed for your boss and your coworkers and your neighbors and your church and your community. Every single day of your life, you have been adjusting yourself, trimming yourself, reshaping yourself to fit the expectations of whoever was in the room. Not completely, not always, but constantly. A little softer here, a little quieter there, a little more agreeable than you actually feel, a little less angry than you actually are, a little more patient than your body wants to be. You have been editing yourself for 60 or 70 years, and the edited version is the one the world knows. But it is not you. It is the version of you that was shaped by a lifetime of accommodation, and you may not even know the difference anymore. The performance has been running so long that you have forgotten there was ever a person underneath it. Loneliness strips the audience away, and when the audience is gone, the performance has no reason to continue. That is terrifying at first, because when you stop performing, you are left standing on a stage with nobody watching and no script to follow, and no idea what to do with your hands. Who am I when nobody is here? Who am I when nobody needs me to be anything? Who am I when the only person I have to please is myself? Those questions, which sound simple, are the most profound questions a human being can face. And most people never face them because they are never alone long enough for the questions to surface. They are always surrounded, always performing, always adjusting. and they die without ever meeting the person underneath the performance. You, sitting in your quiet house with your silent phone and your empty calendar, you have the chance they never had. The chance to meet yourself. Not the parent, not the spouse, not the worker, not the caretaker, not the role. You. My grandmother lived alone for 19 years. I have told you about those years before, but I have never told you what she said about freedom. She told me, during those 19 years, she experienced a kind of freedom she had never known in her entire life. Not despite the loneliness, through it. She said, for the first time in my life, I eat what I want when I want to eat it. I sleep when my body tells me to sleep. I wake when my body tells me to wake. I sit in silence without anyone asking me why I am so quiet. I cry without anyone asking me what is wrong. I laugh at things that are only funny to me. I talk to the birds and the trees, and I do not care if anyone thinks I have lost my mind. For 70 years I shaped my days around other people's needs. Now my days are shaped around mine, and my needs, it turns out, are very simple. Quiet, nature, solitude, gratitude, one good meal, one long walk, one conversation with the sky. That is all I need. And I never knew that because I was never alone long enough to find out. I watched her during those 19 years, and I can tell you that my grandmother at 85, alone, widowed, with a quiet house and a silent phone, was more alive than most people I know who are surrounded by others every day. She woke up with her own schedule. She ate meals she chose, at times she chose, in portions she chose. She read books she wanted to read. She sat in spots she wanted to sit in. She walked paths she wanted to walk. And nobody, not a single person on this earth, could interrupt her peace without her permission. She had become the gatekeeper of her own life, and the gate was hers to open and close as she pleased. That is freedom. Not the greeting card version, the real version. The version that only comes after you have lost everything the world says you need and discovered that what you need was always simpler than what you had. I am not romanticizing loneliness. I need to say that clearly. The early months were hard for her. She told me she cried every night for the first year after my grandfather died. She told me the silence almost drove her mad in the beginning. She told me there were mornings when she could not think of a single reason to get out of bed. I am not pretending those mornings didn't happen. I am telling you that those mornings were not the end of the story. They were the tunnel. And on the other side of the tunnel was a meadow she could never have reached with another person by her side, because the meadow was hers, and only hers. And it required the tunnel to get there. The loneliness was the tunnel. The freedom was the meadow. And most people turn back in the tunnel because the darkness is too heavy. They run back to any relationship, any noise, any distraction, just to escape the dark. My grandmother walked through it, and what she found on the other side was worth every tear. Before I share the next teaching, I need to tell you something. I am not going to be here forever, and most of what I know was never written anywhere. So I sat down and I wrote it, all of it. 20 teachings, 4 parts, in the order they were meant to be received. The ones about transforming pain into power. The ones about finding yourself in the silence. The ones I have never said on camera. It is called The Native Way, and it costs less than one dinner you will not remember. Scan the code on your screen or look in the comments, but do not leave yet, because what I am about to share next are the steps that actually turn the loneliness into freedom, and the first one starts tomorrow morning. The first step is to stop calling it loneliness. That is not denial. That is precision. The word loneliness carries a verdict inside it. It says something is wrong, something is missing. You are incomplete. And as long as you label your experience with that word, your brain will treat it as a problem to be solved. And the solution your brain reaches for is people. More people. Any people. And that desperate reaching for any people is what leads to bad decisions. Staying in relationships that hurt you because at least they are not silent. Tolerating disrespect because at least someone is in the room. Calling someone who doesn't care just to hear a voice. The word loneliness creates the desperation. Change the word and you change the experience. Call it solitude. Solitude carries a different verdict. It says you are alone, and that is okay. It says the silence is not empty. It is open. Open for you to fill with whatever you choose instead of whatever other people dump into it. Loneliness is the absence of others. Solitude is the presence of yourself. Same circumstance, completely different experience. And the only thing that changed was the word you used to describe it. The second step is to discover what you actually like, not what you were taught to like, not what your spouse liked, not what your friends enjoyed, not what your generation was supposed to find fulfilling, what you actually like. And this is harder than it sounds because you may not know. You may have spent so many decades accommodating other people's preferences that your own preferences are buried under layers of compromise. I knew a woman named Ruth who was alone for the first time at 68 after her husband passed. And for the first few months she was miserable, lost, directionless. And then something small happened. She was flipping through television channels and she landed on a documentary about the ocean. Deep sea creatures, bioluminescent fish, underwater caves, and she was fascinated, completely absorbed. She watched for 3 hours, and when it ended, she realized something that shocked her. She had always wanted to watch things like that, always. But her husband hated documentaries. He wanted sports. So for 41 years, Ruth watched sports. Not because she liked sports, because the television belonged to the marriage, and the marriage had a habit, and the habit was sports. And now the marriage was over, and the television was hers, and the first thing she chose, freely, without compromise, was a documentary about the ocean. That small moment was the beginning of Ruth's freedom. Not because documentaries are life-changing, because the act of choosing without accommodation is life-changing. Ruth started making a list. Things I want to try, things I want to watch, things I want to eat, places I want to go. And every item on that list was a brick in a new identity, an identity that was not shaped by anyone else's needs, an identity that was, for the first time in 41 years, entirely hers. And the loneliness that had been suffocating her started to loosen its grip. Not because people arrived, because Ruth arrived. The real Ruth. The one who had been waiting behind 41 years of sports. I want you to try what Ruth did. Not the documentary, the list. Sit down with a piece of paper and write at the top, things I have always wanted to do but never did because someone else's life was in the way. And then write. Don't filter, don't judge, don't dismiss anything as silly or too late or too expensive or too unusual. Just write. Maybe you always wanted to paint, but your husband thought it was a waste of time. Maybe you always wanted to travel alone, but your family said it was dangerous. Maybe you always wanted to learn an instrument, but there was never quiet in the house long enough to practice. Maybe you always wanted to wake up at noon on a Tuesday just because you could. Put it all down, every suppressed desire, every buried curiosity, every interest that got overruled by someone else's preference. That list is your map. It is the map of the person you would have been if you had never had to compromise. And now, for the first time, there is nobody to compromise with. The list is not a fantasy. It is a menu, and every item on it is available to you, right now, in the quiet house, with the silent phone, with the empty calendar that you have been calling a prison, but that is actually the most open schedule you have had since you were a child. A child has the whole day ahead of them with nothing planned, and they see that as an adventure. You have the whole day ahead of you with nothing planned, and you see it as a sentence. The difference is not the day, it is how you see it. See it the way the child does, as open, as possible, as yours. The third step is to build a relationship with silence, not tolerate silence, not endure it. Build a relationship with it the way you would build a relationship with a person. Slowly, with curiosity, with willingness to be uncomfortable at first, and trust that the discomfort will pass. Silence is terrifying to most people because silence is where the thoughts live, the regrets, the fears, the what-ifs, the memories you have been running from. When the noise stops, the thoughts get loud, and most people turn the noise back on immediately. Television, radio, phone calls, anything to drown out the inner voice. But here is what I learned from my grandmother, and what I have learned from my own years of solitude. If you sit in the silence long enough, the loud thoughts eventually say everything they need to say, and they quiet down. The regrets stop repeating once they have been heard. The fears stop shouting once they have been acknowledged. The memories stop haunting once they have been looked at directly instead of avoided. The silence is not the enemy. The silence is the therapy, and it is free. And it is available to you every single evening in the quiet house that you have been calling a prison. My grandmother said silence is the room where God does his best work. She said when you fill every moment with noise, you are telling God that his voice is not welcome. You are drowning him out with television and chatter and worry and distraction. But when you sit in the silence and you let the noise fall away, and you just breathe and listen, that is when the deepest things find you. Not always God, sometimes just yourself, sometimes just a feeling of peace that has no name and no source, but is real and warm and present. That feeling cannot reach you through noise. It can only reach you through stillness. And your lonely house, the one you have been dreading, is the stillest place you have ever had access to. Use it. Sit in it. Let it work on you. The loneliness is the noise. The freedom is underneath it. And it only surfaces when you stop fighting the quiet and let it become your companion. The fourth step is the most important. Stop measuring your life by the number of people in it. The world has taught you that a full life means a full room, that happiness means surrounded, that success means loved by many. And by that measurement, your life right now is a failure. Empty room, silent phone, nobody at the table. But the measurement is wrong. The measurement has always been wrong. Some of the loneliest people I have ever known were surrounded by others every day. Married, popular, busy, never alone, and miserable, because they were performing for an audience 24 hours a day and never once had a moment of genuine freedom. And some of the most at peace people I have ever known were alone, deeply alone, nobody calling, nobody visiting, and free. Free to think their own thoughts, free to feel their own feelings, free to live at their own pace without apologizing for it. Free in a way that the surrounded person can never be, because the surrounded person is always on stage, and the alone person has finally left the theater. You have left the theater. That is what happened to you. The audience went home, The lights went down. The stage is empty, and you have been standing there in the dark, thinking the show is over. But the show is not over. The show just changed. It is no longer a performance for others. It is a private concert for you, by you. The music you play now doesn't need to impress anyone. It just needs to be true. And true music, played in an empty room, for no audience, with no applause, is the most honest music a person can make. That is your freedom. That is what the loneliness was hiding, not emptiness. Permission. Permission to finally live a life that is yours alone, unedited, unperformed, uncompromised. Yours. I want to say one final thing to the person who is sitting in their quiet house right now, thinking this all sounds beautiful, but I am still in pain. I hear you, and I am not dismissing your pain. The pain is real. The ache of wanting someone to call you and nobody calling is real. The weight of eating every meal alone is real. The heaviness of an evening with no voice in the room but the television is real. I am not asking you to pretend those things don't hurt. I am asking you to hold two things at the same time, the pain and the possibility, because they are not opposites. They are neighbors. The pain of loneliness and the possibility of freedom live on the same street, and you can visit both in the same day. You can cry at dinner because the chair across from you is empty, and you can smile at sunrise because you slept exactly as long as your body wanted, and nobody woke you, and nobody needed you, and the morning belongs entirely to you. Both of those things can be true at the same time. The tears and the freedom, the ache and the adventure. You do not have to choose one. You can carry both. And over time, if you do the work I described today, the freedom grows and the pain shrinks. Not disappears, shrinks. Until one day you realize that the freedom takes up most of the room and the pain has moved to a small corner where it sits quietly and reminds you, occasionally, that you once loved people enough to miss them. And that small corner is not a wound anymore. It is a monument to the love you gave and the life you lived and the people who mattered. And the rest of the room, the vast, open rest of it, is yours, free, uncluttered, full of silence that no longer frightens you, and time that no longer crushes you, and space that no longer echoes with absence, but hums softly with possibility. That is what is waiting for you on the other side of this. Walk toward it, one step at a time, one quiet morning at a time, one documentary at a time, one list at a time, one conversation with the sky at a time. The freedom is there. It has been there the whole time. You just couldn't see it through the tears. Wipe the tears. Look again. It's there. If what you heard today stayed with you, the book is there. The Native Way. 20 teachings, 100 pages. Written the way I would speak to you if we were sitting together. Scan the QR code on the screen with your phone or find the link in the comments. Read one chapter. Sit with it. Now I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, what is one thing you have discovered about yourself since being alone that you never knew before? I read every comment, and if this is the kind of conversation you have been looking for, subscribe to this channel. We are not collecting viewers here. We are collecting people who remember. Come back next week. I am not done teaching yet.